All right, today we're going to talk about one of the absolute coolest dinosaurs that ever lived, the ankylosaur. I mean, this thing was basically a walking prehistoric tank, maybe the most heavily armored animal the world has ever seen. But there's one part of it, one feature that has had scientists scratching their heads for decades.
So let's just cut right to the chase. You see, ankylosaurs had this wild tail that ended in a massive, bony club. It was basically a built-in sledgehammer. So the big question, the mystery we're really digging into today, is this. Who was on the receiving end of that thing? The answer, it turns out, is a little more complicated than you might think.
But first, before we can even get to that tail, you have to understand just how bizarre this animal really was. Paleontologists call it an armored oddity, and believe me, they are not kidding.
I mean, the sheer amount of armor on this animal is just mind-boggling. We're talking huge spikes coming right out of its shoulders, a head that's completely covered in bony plates. And get this, some even had bony eyelids. Their bodies were so incredibly wide that scientists are still trying to figure out how they even managed to walk around.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. Even the experts are blown away. As one paleontologist said, they are simply one of the most bizarre animals we've ever found. It's this level of strangeness that makes them so cool. Okay, so now let's talk about the main event, the feature that really sets them apart from pretty much any animal alive today. Let's talk about that incredible hammer-like tail. So what is a tail club exactly? Well, imagine taking two giant lumps of bone and armor and fusing them directly onto the last few bones of the tail. What you get is this solid, super heavy structure that looks and acts, well, pretty much like a hammerhead on the end of a long, swinging handle.
Now, when scientists first uncovered this, the conclusion seemed, well, pretty obvious. This thing had to be a weapon for fighting off predators, and for a very long time, that was the leading theory. And that makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, we see this pattern all over the natural world. Animals have always evolved these specialized tools for combat. You think about the horns on a rhino or the antlers on a deer. The Ankylosaurus tail club just seemed to fit that mold perfectly.
And the fossils? Oh yeah, they totally backed this up. Scientists found clear evidence of enormous pelvic muscles that would have powered that tail. The handle part of the tail was reinforced with these bony rods, making it super stiff. All of this meant it could be swung from side to side with absolutely terrifying force.
Okay, so just how much force are we talking about here? Well, some paleontologists actually did the math, and they figured out that a good swing from an Ankylosaurus tail could hit with enough force to completely wreck a modern car. Just imagine what that would do to a predator's leg.
So, the picture seemed crystal clear. The evidence was all there. This was an incredible defensive weapon designed to shatter the bones of any hungry T-Rex that got too close. Case closed, mystery solved, right?
Well, not so fast. As scientists kept digging, a new idea started to pop up, and it turned this simple story into a much more interesting riddle about rivalry.
Scientists began to ask a different kind of question. Sure, it was a great weapon against predators, no doubt. But could it have had another use? Was it really only for fighting other species? And that's when this new theory really took shape. What if those massive tails weren't just for defense against other kinds of dinosaurs? What if they were also used to fight each other? You know, battling a rival to win a mate, or maybe to see who gets to be the leader of the herd. And this is what brings us to the final piece of this puzzle, the evidence that finally pitted dinosaur against dinosaur. Okay, so let's just quickly trace this story. For decades, it was all about predator defense. Then, more recently, scientists started to poke holes in that idea. And then, in 2022, a huge study came out that gave us the breakthrough evidence everyone had been waiting for. And the results were stunningly clear. This latest study pointed out specific injuries on ankylosaur fossils, damage that could only have been caused by the tail club of another ankylosaur. This was the smoking gun. It proved they were, in fact, using these weapons on each other. So why does this matter so much? Well, because every discovery like this brings us one giant step closer to understanding what these incredible animals were really like. We now know the ankylosaur wasn't just some passive walking fortress. It was an active fighter, wrapped up in complex social battles with its own kind.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? For decades, we thought we had the story of the Ankylosaurus tail all figured out. And then, one new study, one fresh look at the evidence, changed everything we thought we knew. What other secrets from the prehistoric world are just sitting there, waiting for that next big breakthrough?